na me ka say dey komo ba ko e Ghana ha Ghana for di obia eboboso obia ede na no atum D-Levy ba betodwa omode levies bi eba betutu petrol diesel nti ukabo mafuo so omo chire mu se ni nyina ne se omode ba be solve doom so issues na se uto bia 1 liter na chire se ya 1 cedi na se odi 1 cedi ato so ene ade na ye di aboa amaka na afa ne ntoma pa edi efra na yehu se light ne de sisi ade ebisi so na abra amode sense mu ba ye na chire se NPP amanyoku ni se ehe ni ha Ghana for mu yenya twompa abra Ghana na ye pese Ghana afa ne ntoma pa efra ye kofa D-Levy ede ba ye Ghana for kan ye hu sem omu boy echi omu kan sema kese de fa ye hu se o ena ye de be bo aman ne kuro no chesi ye be ye niema emfata na so we de ba ye no anya de amobeka ba Ghana for ni bi so e chire mu a D-Levy ya be omu sum because se wo hwe levy omu de be ensisa hwe and my yen to Larry Femu ensisa hwe a chire so omu chiro mu tem se we ena aba na no ana busia for se oba NPP amanyoku ni ma ni papa ko di mu akutine yi papa eba ni communication any idea we jina ne na so pa kwadu oponkroma no no ana wade ala betu dia se NDC for mo ya kronfo so omo di levy ba ye no na ye 1% mo de mo synchronfo 10% ankasa ewusia for kan se ni bebre na di fa di levy no chire ni nsem chire mu se levy no de idea ano odin kese eduwa wa Ghana for so yanko ni yanko ti nsema kwadu oponkroma editudwa edifa di levy a NDC amanyoku no edeban
Etosuminu, Senator American 11% we 8%. So Casa Ojo 4 cedis 50 pesos on a gallon now. Or the 2 gallon a bonus wa 8%. 8. Now share Ghana taxes are back or somewhere. Tax they will start here be over 1% and now 2% and now 1.5. Ye koye ni be a 0.5 be a become and now 2 be a become. Ye kwa kudu level 3 and maybe a consolidated taxes be me no me and sana basro. And they insist buying the tax be but not from the 1 or say 8%. But when I buy this on no goodwill to bet me be 8%. And yes, 1 cedi, me pacho 8%, according to say into Sududu. Now, D-Levy, ye de bano. First, you say, wow, transaction embro 100 Ghana cedis, no, because near per se, here for ifrim, buja for ifrim. We de bano. There's no minimum threshold. D-Levy at the buyer no near say Sika ye try a finimu na ye be 2 billion. Then kofo ya form a buying mem yet immediate yomoka. Puntujuma ye ya aketri yet immediate ya hoka. Omukache say a to bottom tax 2 billion. In fact, that will be levy fee on. Here, Mahama Yarga by announces only 2 billion as Ghana for bottom. We almost almost 6 billion. A few we say. And unquire 3 times the yield near 3 times, almost 6 billion. A few we say. D-Levy no economics mo will be a friend of cascading effect. Adibi wa we are if you saw a bet near BCS. D-Levy na said that I say obi koto bibia ebetnia ne bo ne beda so abedu form we ne san say ye petrol ne diesel no mo yintino cascading effect no ye 100% ebe affect bibiara e faka say one kasa kraka sa wo mfaka obenante a say aduane na wo koto ne ye de faka fi tepa ne de ba ya eventually ne bo be kosoro atade na wo koto na gya na wo kudi no say e faka ne ba ya wo de bia wo so mpese obeti anto obenante nipa na o de duane no full car no de no beto so e de aba nti wo de to even no mo D-Levy o mu try adapa o mu try adapa we e mu awire mpem what esen no no mo mpese Ghana po bedi hun community no anaju de sue midnight no mo de be share parliament e ka bibi o mo so no mo numbers to mo to aba e free ho e no na ye twa aban agina ye twa aban adwen agina so say ka say wo krom no dai brawachi na yenyine ni nkomo na asem no se wo se ka bi da wo apeso tua yenyine ntuatu adwen kwa ebitumi afa so tua sa aka no enya dia wo de to foforo 8% levy and about to Ghana for so.
The E-Levy had an effective rate of 1% per transaction, yet it was described as pickpocketing. This Dumsor levy has the effective rate of 8% per transaction. And that's why we say that it is midnight robbery. The e-levy avoided transactions that were not in excess of 100 Ghana cedis, you will recall. And the argument that was canvassed at the time was that we had to create some room for the very poor to be excluded from it. Yet the e-levy was bastardized. The poor were exempted. This Dumsor levy has no minimum threshold. The poor are actually the most affected because, unlike the rich, for the poor, every single cedi counts a lot more. The e-levy, number 4, was payable only by people who opted to do money transfers. This Dumsor levy is payable by all Ghanaians, unless you decide to work every day. Because even if you're a farmer and you are buying fuel for your tractors to work on your farm, you will pay this Dumsor levy that this government has just imposed. It's payable by everybody. Number 5, while the e-levy had a limited cascading effect, this Dumsor levy has a total 100% cascading effect because it affects transportation. And consequently, any item that is transported, food, clothes, whatever, once you are transporting it, there's a cascading effect that eventually, when we go full circle, will be paid by the everyday Ghanaian. Number 6, the e-levy was designed to yield approximately 2 billion Ghana cedis from persons who elected to do transfers or transactions. Now, colleagues, you are here in Parliament. You will recall the day that the e-levy was repealed. Our good friend, the majority leader, was on his feet, shouting his voice hoarse that the government has put 2 billion cedis back into the pockets of Ghanaians. I'm sure you recall. This Dumsor levy is taking from everybody over 5.7 billion cedis for this fiscal year. So if repealing the e-levy put 2 billion back into the pockets of Ghanaians, what does introducing the Dumsor levy that takes away 5.7 billion do? In his own words, this government is taking 5.7 billion Ghana cedis from the pocket of Ghanaians. And we think it is very dishonest because if you claim that you are giving Ghanaians 2 billion back, which was so untoward, it was evil by the previous administration, how do you give back 2 billion and take 5.7 billion from the people? We, however, have some alternative suggestions to make to the government, and I'd like to highlight a few of them. The minority believes strongly that if this government is minded to pay off the energy sector debt, because you recall that part of their justification is that they want to pay off the energy sector debt. In fact, the president said he will pay it off by December 2026. And we have just done the maths for you, that if you look at what is going to accrue in the 2 years, it cannot pay off the energy sector debt. But let us assume that they are being honest with that they want to pay off the energy sector debt. We think that what the government should do is to conclude the renegotiations of the of the power purchase agreements which were started by the previous administration, and to pass on 2 things, the fuel and capacity charges into the PPAs. Government should include these in the tariff calculations to eliminate the need for off-book debts that are caused by the take or pay clauses in the energy sector contracts that were signed between 2013 and 2016. And you will recall that that is one of the major challenges that has created the stock of energy sector debt. The capacity charges and the take or pay charges, which could not be included in the tariffs. And so every now and then a bill is sent to the finance ministry to pay, and that bill is accumulating. If the government is really intended to pay, one of the things it should do is to complete the renegotiation, move the fuel purchases and the excess capacity charges into the PPAs so that when people consume a certain realistic amount, then they will pay. Number 2, government should quicken the efforts to bring efficiency into the operations of GRIDCO and ECG to reduce transmission, distribution, and other technical losses. You have followed the arguments that part of the problem is the losses occasioned during transmission and distribution and collection. If government really means well, that is one of the areas to focus attention and front load. Number 3, we're asking government to pursue the strategy that we proposed in 2024 to go heavily into renewable energy. as advertised, for example, in our manifesto, to reduce the need for fuel importation and its consequent negative impacts on the economy. And you will recall that prior to 2024, in the elections, we signaled that if the NPP was in power today, we will focus heavily on augmenting with solar power, so that this whole thing of buying HFO and fuel for the power plants will be reduced. And you don't have to then come and impose these levies on Ghanaians at 8% to pay for the inefficiencies in the sector, contrary to the promise that you made. In closing, colleagues, it's already clear that the government intends to go ahead with the implementation of this draconian levy, and they will not listen to anybody's plea, anybody's reasoning, or anybody's alternative ideas. We as a minority group representing over 10 million Ghanaians, and sometimes people say, oh, they are just 88. In our 88 constituencies, you will find over 10 million Ghanaians. We want to advertise that we'll be embarking on the following. Number one, we'll continuously engage the people of Ghana, civil society groups, driver unions, and the media to showcase the true impact of this draconian and negative levy that the government is imposing on us. Number two, we'll continue to stand with the groups of honest Ghanaians, the driver unions, the Chamber of Oil marketers, who are opposing the levy or asking government to pull back and to engage better, and not to go by this midnight introduction into parliament and using their numbers to push it through. We know the government has a lot of goodwill, but this is not the way to do things. Number three, we'll continue to stand in solidarity with the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies in their position that this downstream sector is already heavily overtaxed. And now if you add this new levy, effectively about 26% of what you are paying at the pump is all taxes. And we'll continue with our advocacy to government to withdraw this levy and adopt less painful and more pragmatic options, some of which we have suggested in this afternoon's press briefing.